Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down. And the game is tied. Bang! Jeremy Lin from downtown. And the Knicks take the lead. And he's good. And he's fouled. It's out. And he is fouled. The Knicks have defeated the Pacers in dramatic fashion. Smith puts it up for the win. It's gone! It's gone! J.R. Smith nails the jumper, and the Knicks beat the Bobcats here in Charlotte.
Welcome to This Is Our Year, a New York Knicks podcast. Here are your hosts, Jason and Joel.
Let's get it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. My name is Jason. I'm alongside your co-host, Joel, and this is our year. What do you think about that, Joel?
I think it is our year. I'm doing great, Jason. I'm super excited. I'm ready to share our passion for the Knicks with fans around the world. I think it's an exciting time to be a Knicks fan. I think that if you're a Knicks fan, you should be proud of what management is doing. I think management is trying to develop young players. I think that after this trade that we recently made, we've cleared cap space, and I think that we can actually attract some free agents this summer. And even the way the team is playing, we're being competitive. We're still losing games, but I think we still hold up hope that we might end up with a top 3 pick. So I think it's an exciting time to be a Knicks fan.
That's right. That's right. And, going into that, this is our year. I think this is our year. Not only, this year, but every year. Every year as a Knicks fan, that's how I feel. This is our year. And sure, I'm excited about the possibility of Zion. I'm interested in, who's coming as a free agent. But guess what? As a Knicks fan, I'm in it for the long haul. Whether or not, we get KD, whether or not we get Zion, next year is going to be our year because I'm a Knicks fan and that's not going to change.
Right. And I think that goes a little bit into why we have named this podcast, This Is Our Year. It resonates in Knicks fans, especially, I would say, especially us two, being Knicks, long time Knicks fans. Every year, I feel like it's our year. I think that winning is super easy, and teams who are accustomed to winning don't appreciate what it is to be a fan of a team. Losing takes a lot of guts. We've been doing a lot of losing the last 20 years, but I think that every Knicks fan can actually relate to the name of this podcast. This is our year because actually as Knicks fans, even though we've been losing for the past 20 years, we haven't been relevant much. We always think it's our year. So I think that's the main reason why this is our year. The name of this podcast is actually
it works
to us. Absolutely.
Yep, it works.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly, it's like a mantra for me. Like, this is our year. That's kind of like, I'm proud to say I'm a Knicks fan and I'm positive and we're going to, keep showing our dedication and our support to this team. And guess what? It's going to pay off one day. We're going to, it's one of these years, we're going to win a championship. It's going to be, that, amazing moment we're all, here for. And, now that you explained that, let's kind of like talk about what we're doing here, what the listeners can expect. Yeah. What do you think about that, Joel?
Yeah, today's our very first episode. It's been a while since we started planning this. I think that a lot of people don't understand the love and passion we have for the Knicks so much that we decided to start a podcast. We're going to go a little different. We're going to start a little 3-part series here with the first three episodes. The first episode, we're going to dedicate exclusively to the past, where we've been the past 20 years. The second episode, we're going to dedicate a little bit to what players we have now. So we're going to analyze the players we have now, where we feel these players are going, who we should keep, who we shouldn't keep. And then the third and final episode is going to be a very exciting one because we're going to do a little bit of speculation, and we're going to talk about potential free agents. We're going to talk about the draft. So it's going to be
Zion
Williamson, man. The guy is amazing. I dream of him wearing an Knicks uniform.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that later on. And like you said, but let me tell you a little bit about myself, Joe, and to our listeners. And I mean, I know, because we've been friends for, over 30 years now. But why am I a Knicks fan? I'll tell you. First of all, they're a New York team. And growing up, that was something I've always been proud of. I'm a New Yorker. And, in front of the jerseys, it says New York. And that in it of itself is enough for me to support this team. I don't know how you feel about that, Joel, but that's how I feel about it. The team, in the 90s when I started watching was like this gritty physical team that took crap from no one. Like it was nothing that, nothing to be, ashamed of, when we lost some of those series because we fought and, literally and figuratively, we fought, like the Heat, the Pacers, the Bulls, and that, we didn't win. It was just disappointing, but it was always super exciting to watch. And I was
Correct.
super proud of those teams. And I mean, I don't know. What do you think about that? What do you have to say about that?
Well, for me, it started just as yourself. It started in the 90s. I think that I grew up in a time where New York City was a big basketball city. Not that we're not a basketball city anymore. We just haven't won in so long. We haven't been competitive in so long. But in the 90s, we were a big basketball city. However, I grew up in a Dominican household where it was all about baseball. And it was a little rough at first because I wasn't really familiarized with basketball. Once I got into the Knicks, I saw how good this team was. I saw how the fight this team had, the grit this team had. I actually fell in love with those players. My favorite Knick in those early 90s was John Starks. I feel like Charles Oakley and Anthony Mason, they just had this grit. They felt like New Yorkers to me. So that's why I felt
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yep. No, definitely. Like if we're talking about favorite Knicks of all time, I could tell you mine. So at least one of my favorites. Back in the day, Allen Houston. I know you loved him too. And
for sure.
Allen Houston, he was like that calm, smooth player. But
That's right.
like I don't know how you felt about, how things ended with him, and we could talk about that later. But my actual favorite Knick of all time was Nate Robinson. If you know me, you know that I'm a short guy, and Nate Robinson was this like really short, at least for the NBA standards, really short guy that was just jumping and dunking on people. He brought excitement to the Knicks at a time when we had, not a lot to, root for. He was winning dunk contests, and
He was representing for the city. Yeah.
exactly. And going back to representing for the city. That's what it was about for me. And I, to this day, anyone who reps the city, I have love for them.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I can say my personal favorite Knick, you already touched a little bit upon him. It has to be Allen Houston. I feel like he was the sharpshooter when sharpshooters weren't a thing.
Yeah.
When the league was not a 3-point shooting league, he was one of those sharpshooters. And he grew on me. His demeanor, like you said, his calm demeanor. He just seemed like a leader. He seemed like he came to play every night, ready to play. He can drop 30 on you easily, and it was weird because this guy couldn't drive the ball too well. So he was primarily a jump shooting player. He was a jump shooter and he was good at it. It's sad how it ended with him because he was my favorite Knick. He still is my favorite Knick of all time.
Yeah.
But pretty much my favorite Knick memory even involves him. I don't know if you want to share something like that. My favorite Knick memory, Jason, involves Allen Houston and involves a buzzer beater against the Miami Heat.
Yeah, I remember that. Who doesn't remember that?
1999 playoff run. I hated the Miami Heat like most Knicks fans. Or if you're a Knicks fan and you don't hate the Heat, I don't know how you're a Knicks fan.
Yeah,
and
what were you watching?
Those guys, right. And I hated those guys. I hated Mourning. I hated Tim Hardaway. So it just felt so good to beat those guys. And the season we had that year with a lot of injuries and a lot of players that were out of the lineup. Exactly. And making it all the way to the NBA Finals. To me, that was probably the best season I've experienced as a fan. So I'm not sure what's your favorite Knick memory. That's mine.
Yeah. No, I mean, my favorite Knick memory, I guess you could say, is similar to that. It was against the Heat, coincidentally, against the Heat. Like you said, some of our greatest moments were against the Heat, and 1998. Eastern Conference, the first round, game 4 against the Heat. LJ Mourning, the fight, it was amazing. Like the energy, how they just hated each other, and they actually showed it, and it was like the passion behind everything. Right. And there was a little backstory behind that. They were kind of, they had history. The year before that, I believe, Charlie Ward got pushed, and it was there was this whole brawl.
Well, there's always been history, and I think again, it even shows the grit. Like if I remember that moment, well, Jeff Van Gundy had to be held back a little too.
Yeah,
and I think it shows the grit. Like even the coach felt, even the even the coaches we've had felt like New Yorkers.
Yeah,
I think that's something that's lacking in our team, and I can say that it's turning around a little bit. I feel like there's some players who you can kind of see that they want to be here, they have a little fight in them, but that's been lacking as our organization. Players who actually want to be in New York City.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know about you, but that to me, that's the most important thing for me in a player. Just to show that they want to be here. But speaking of, we spoke a little bit about, I guess, our most favorite moments or happiest moments. How about your most painful or saddest moments?
Saddest and painful moment. There's been a lot, Jason. We've been losing for a long time, and of course that produces a lot of sad feelings and sad emotions in you, painful moments. But I would have to say that this is gonna be a little odd and maybe a little bit surprising. But I would say that my most painful moment was losing out on Stephen Curry. I didn't think
Oh
Stephen
yeah, I
Curry was
remember
going to
that.
be the shooter he became. I didn't think he
No,
was going to
no
be the
one saw
greatest
that
shooter in
coming.
the world. But at the time, we really needed a point guard. He was right there for us. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, Golden State stepped in and grabbed him
right
right
before
before
us.
us. But that's
Yeah,
probably my most painful moment because Stephen Curry's a two-time NBA champion. He's a three-time NBA champion, and he's a
yeah,
two-time
yeah.
NBA MVP. And he could have been us. That could have been us. And I think that if he would have came here, we would have made that trade with Melo, which we did. It would have been a little different. I think that having Melo playing with a good point guard, a
Yeah.
point guard that can feed him the ball, a point guard who could play like Curry plays, I think that would have made a big difference in Melo. And I think we would have been
Definitely.
talking about a little bit more winning here instead of the losing years that we had with Melo, unfortunately.
I agree 100%. And that's, I remember that draft and I also was disappointed, that he was picked up. Oh, it's funny because my most painful moment was actually also an off the court moment. And it was the summer of 2010. And like, everyone knows it as the decision, LeBron James. You remember that?
I do.
Yeah. And, a lot of people would think, yeah, it's about LeBron. Yeah, he didn't come. And I agree. I mean, I'll admit that I was mostly disappointed that LeBron didn't come.
That's funny that you said if I remember. How can I forget?
I know. No,
How can I forget 2010 when we were hyping? We were on the LeBron train the whole time, and we were hyping this idea that LeBron James was going to wear a Knicks jersey.
And yeah,
it was disappointing.
Exactly. So that hurt me. And then on top of that, like you said, that whole offseason, it was just a lot of buzz because we had cap space. We could have picked up, more than one superstar. Absolutely. We could have had Bosh. We could have had Wade, Amari, who eventually actually did come. But I really wanted LeBron. He was the crown jewel of that free agent class, and we didn't get him. So that hurt a lot. And I can say that was my, most painful moment.
Well, I think that we can now pretty much the fans or the listeners can have a little bit of an idea of who we are and why we're Knicks fans and why we're doing this podcast. I'm truly, me, it's going to be an incredible day when the Knicks win a championship. I know how you're going to feel when that happened. And I think that we're just looking forward to the future now.
I agree. And, but before we look into the future, I guess we got to talk about the past. And, next segment, that's what we'll hit upon, right?
Yes, sir. Okay, guys, let's dive into the main topic for this episode, which we've titled Goodbye, Kristaps Porzingis. As we all know, KP is no longer a New York Knicks, and right now we want to take the time to just go over his entire career with the New York Knicks. We want to analyze the trade, how it all went down. So, Jason, how about we start at the beginning and we start back on draft night 2015?
Yeah, that sounds good, Joel. I mean, what can we say? I don't know about you, but initially I was upset that night. And I remember us speaking on the phone, before the draft, was before the draft pick was announced. And you remember the crying kid?
I do remember the crying kid, Jason.
Yeah.
How can I forget the crying kid?
Yeah, I think that was like 95% of us that night, to be honest. Like, what just happened?
I think Knicks fans became. I think I looked directly into that kid and just said, "That's me. I'm that crying kid right now," because it was just a tough spot to be in. Tough spot to be in because I really wanted a good player, right? I thought we had the opportunity to draft a better player.
Yeah, you know what it was, Joel? KP was not on anyone's radar.
Right.
He was a relative unknown, unless you were like a very in-depth scout that just was into European ball. You had no idea who KP was. Of course, Karl Anthony Towns, Okafor, Russell. Oh, yeah. Even Moody, those were the guys that we had, on the radar. Obviously, Cat wasn't going to drop to us. I believe I remember, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but you thought we had a chance at Russell. I knew that he was going to LA.
I did. So pretty much, I had spoken to you maybe a couple of weeks before, like during the NCAA tournament. I think D'Angelo Russell recorded a triple-double, and I was just like, wow, this guy really has incredible passing abilities. We need a point guard. And automatically, the Knicks disappointed me right away and started winning games. And I'm like, what's going on? I want to draft this guy. I want to get a draft high pick. I didn't think we were going to get the number one pick because we never get lucky. And of course we didn't. But we ended up dropping all the way down to the fourth spot. And it was disappointing, Jason. I have to say, I really wanted us to have a high draft pick that year.
Yeah.
But, things
didn't work out.
They rarely go our way.
I know. 100% with you there. But I remember specifically hoping for Okafor. I felt like we needed some help up top.
Well, we didn't have big men.
Exactly.
We didn't have a dominant big man. And Okafor, like you said, during those days, he had a good collegiate career. and
Yeah.
coming from Duke, he was like severe, like very highly recruited, and I think that scouts were just raving about all his post game moves and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
specifically his
And
offensive moves, I remember, were
correct,
pretty
correct.
big. Yeah, so I also like Moutier. I was very interested in his athletic
Hmm.
ability and his his hops, like we like to
I
say, and
agree.
he
I
was
agree.
dynamic.
I
He could
agree.
score. He was in China, which kind of was somewhat of a negative, and I think that's why he dropped so much, or not so much, but he dropped a little bit because of he playing in the
Right.
Chinese league.
And I was really into his game, Jason. I saw a
Yeah,
couple highlights. Like I'm I always go on Draft Express when they existed. I don't think they long
yeah,
I don't think they exist anymore. Then they got bought out, but
yeah,
I would go on Draft Express, and I was always every year I do this, because I'm so
yeah,
into this franchise. And I looked at Moutier. I saw some of his play. I thought he was really good, Jason. At least for the fact that he was playing with grown men
yeah,
overseas.
yep,
A lot of things that I saw well in him was that he can like kind of like conduct an offense. He seemed like a floor general to me. So, and we again, just like we needed a center badly, we also really needed a point guard.
yep. I remember that specifically. We haven't had a star point guard since when I remember you talking about this. We haven't had a star point guard since what, Mark Jackson, that we've drafted.
We haven't drafted a all-star caliber point guard since Mark Jackson, which is
Exactly.
shameful and kind of sad. But
Yeah, so but I don't know what happened. I don't know. You can attest to this, but I don't know. After the pick was announced, I for some reason like 5 minutes afterwards, I was just like, you know what? Let's be optimistic about this. We don't know. Maybe this could work out for us. And I remember talking to you, and for some reason I was optimistic about the trade right after.
I wasn't. It took me a little bit. My wife kind of was told me to go into the room and cry my sorrows away. She was laughing at me actually.
Yeah,
And I took a deep breath. I remember you told me, "Hey, calm down. It could be worse." And I
yeah,
said, "Worse than a skinny European guy who can shoot." Come on, Jason. And you said, "No, just take it easy." And I did. After that, I started watching some highlights. He just looked like a good shooter. I thought his stroke was pretty good. I
yeah,
thought I thought what I thought the night of the draft, when I was analyzing everything, was at worst we drafted a young trade piece that we can use maybe for a future first rounder in the next couple of years.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, I understand that sentiment. Like, it's not that I had any real reason to be optimistic, but I just was, and I can't explain it to this day.
And it
But
paid off.
it paid off. And you
Because
want to
he
know how?
started. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, no, go ahead.
I said it paid off because he started throwing it. He started throwing it down in summer league right away. He became a fan
Exactly.
favorite right away in summer league.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, how well it paid off. He became the most exciting player we've had wear a Knicks jersey in like a decade. I don't
I
know how
would
you
say
feel
so.
about that.
I would say longer than that. I would say I would have to say he's been the most exciting rookie we've had since Patrick Ewing. It sounds weird coming,
Sacrilege.
but it's crazy that we haven't had an exciting rookie since Patrick Ewing.
Yep, and let me read some of his stats, so so the listeners could kind of understand what we're talking about. So
Yeah.
KP was on the All Rookie 15-16 All Rookie team. He was top 10 in blocks throughout his tenure, actually, with the Knicks. KP and Cat were the only two rookies who were unanimously picked. So it was Karl Anthony Towns, KP, the only two guys who everyone was in agreement that were, rookies.
Unanimous rookie
Unanimous, yeah,
selections.
rookie selection. Yep. He was third among rookies in scoring, second in rebounding, and first in blocks. And that's just his rookie year.
And that's an awesome stat.
Yep. And he became the first rookie since Mark Jackson to score 1,000 points. Speaking of Mark Jackson.
Nice. Yeah, I think he pretty shut up all the haters. I think there was executives that were saying that he was maybe executives and scouts that were saying he was maybe 3 or 4 years away from being even an impactful NBA player, which really made sense looking from where he was coming from, not really being familiar with his game. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, he represented. And something I really liked about KP while he was here was that he always represented the city no matter what. He seemed to be proud, at least in that rookie season and his sophomore season. He seemed to be very proud to be a New York Knick. And then all of a sudden, everything started crumbling down with that missed exit meeting with Phil Jackson, Jason.
Yeah, nope, I agree. And even before we get to that, I wanted to read you one more stat, and this is kind of to remind you of what happened in that draft class. After the KP pick, not one player made an All-Star team. So KP was the only between KP, Karl Anthony Towns, and I believe there was D'Angelo Russell this year.
Correct.
The only three guys who have made an all-star team from that draft class.
That's insane. That's amazing. And the crazy part is that I thought Justice Winslow was going to be a very good player, at least an all-star type caliber player. And I think Devin Booker should make an all-star game at some point, but I don't see any other player from that draft class being an all-star anytime, at any time.
Exactly. And then, moving on to what you were saying, once these rumors started, like in these, I guess these reports started coming out about KP not being happy here. And I personally was not taking any of that seriously. I thought it was just kind of like, the TMZ buzz, like, just someone making up some, and, there was smoke. And unfortunately, it turned out to be a big fire. And you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it started with the missing the exit meeting with Phil Jackson. I think that at that point, I kind of was like, something's going on here. You just don't miss an exit meeting with your superiors in any job, because believe it or not, the NBA is still a job. They still work for a paycheck. And so I think that's where it all started, and then it started crumbling down. There was rumors about his brother specifically be trying to get more involved with the organization.
Oh yeah, he wanted to be a shareholder or something like that. I read
something like that. I think it was something similar to that, and then all of a sudden we end up about a week before the trade deadline of this particular NBA season, and that's where the trade went down. Jason, I don't know where you were at, how you felt about the trade. What were your initial thoughts?
Well, like I said, I was hearing the rumors and I was like, nah, right. There's nothing is happening. This is just like, people, reporting stuff to like get some likes and some hits on their websites or blogs or whatever. But then all of a sudden I'm watching ESPN because it's the trade deadline, the actual day of the trade deadline. And I'm watching, to see what happens. I actually remember thinking, the Lakers might get Anthony Davis or something.
They were just having like draft trade deadline specials. Probably.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I'm there waiting to see what the Lakers are gonna do.
Right.
And next thing you know, I'm hearing, breaking news: Kristaps was traded to Dallas. And then I'm like, what? And then I go on social media and I see, and you could kind of tell us if I miss anyone, but DeAndre Jordan, Dennis Smith Jr., Wesley Matthews, 2 first-round picks, and I believe that's it.
Yeah, so we got back. So the trade went down this way. So it was Courtney Lee, it was Tim Hardaway Jr., it was Trey Burke, Kristaps Porzingis for. We got Dennis Smith Jr. back, DeAndre Jordan, Wesley Matthews, and at the time we just had the word that they were draft picks, draft picks. We didn't know if they were second rounders or first rounders, which kind of really threw me off, Jason, because I said, if this is all we're getting, my initial thoughts was, how the hell are we trading our franchise player, our future, for nothing?
Yeah.
I saw it that way. I kind of was upset because Dennis Smith Jr. should have been a Knick the year before, Jason. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
No knock against Frank.
Yeah,
but Dennis Smith Jr. should have been a Knick the year before. So it's like, what are we doing here, guys?
Yeah.
After a while, I took a breath. I analyzed it and I started reading some of the reports. KP wanted out. He did not want to be here. I think you read somewhere in the article something about he wasn't going to sign an extension anyways.
Exactly. Yep. Mark Stein reported that the Knicks had been trying to trade him for weeks, actually, before this, the trade deadline, because they were concerned that he had grown distant from the organization and the team. He was scheduled to be a restricted free agent, like you just alluded to. And if someone offered him a sheet, someone offered him basically a contract, he was definitely interested. And at that point, we might have lost him for nothing, because the Knicks are trying to rebuild right now, and he didn't want to be here. So
I think a couple of factors besides the whole brother thing, besides the whole Phil Jackson thing. I think he was really upset when we traded Billy Hernan Gomez. I think he really was. I think that really impacted him. That was his favorite player on the team. They've been friends for a long time. They played together on the same team in Europe. So I think that really affected KP's mindset. Like, okay, so now you're trading my friends, which is okay. He was an upcoming star. I wouldn't even call him an all-star yet because he didn't make his first all-star team, but he was an upcoming star. But I think he became a little bit of a diva there. And then Fitzdale bench his buddy.
Yeah.
We went ahead and benched Cantor, and I think that really rubbed him the wrong way as well. And then at the end of the day, I felt that if you don't want to be here, and I know we talked about this privately,
Exactly.
if
Yep.
you do not want to be in New York, then I don't want you here. It doesn't matter who you
Exactly.
are. It doesn't matter how good you are. And
100%.
one thing, Jason, about Carmelo Anthony that Knicks fans do not give him enough credit for, the guy wanted to be here, Jason. He wanted to make it work. He
Yep.
wanted to bring wins to the team.
Yeah, no, you couldn't have said it any better. If you don't want to be here, if you're not going to be proud and passionate about being here, then we don't want you here.
Absolutely.
And that's that. And you know what? And like you said, he may have been a really good player, but he wasn't like a superstar.
Not even close.
So,
So yeah, so pretty much at the end of the day, we found out that the picks were actually 2 future first round picks. I don't know how you feel about that, Jason. I know one of them is protected.
oh yeah.
But what I actually know is that I don't believe that the Dallas Mavericks are going to be. I don't believe the Mavericks are going to be anywhere in contention in the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the West. The West is tough.
And I actually don't think they have the players. They don't
Yeah.
have the players. I think Kristaps has a long journey back from that knee injury. We don't know how he's coming back. That's another thing. His health. There's been
Yeah.
reports that the Knicks were very concerned of him coming back from that knee injury.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we gave up a player who was hurt with potential and the potential to be a superstar actually.
Yeah.
But what we got in return was 2 future first round picks. We never get round picks back, Jason, ever.
I know.
And that was a win in and of itself. We're the ones
Yeah.
giving away draft picks, and we're getting draft picks back. That was something that I was very proud of management for doing, and we
Yeah.
got something that we did not have. We gave up 2 bad contracts. We took Courtney Lee off the books, and we took Tim Hardaway Jr. off the books.
Yep.
So we gave up those contracts, and now we have cap space, and that's something that we totally changed my mind about that trade.
Yep. And one final thing that we haven't mentioned that I think is very, very important. Dennis Smith Jr.
Absolutely, Jason.
I
agree.
think he has the potential to be a very good starter for us.
I believe
I'm not
so.
I'm not gonna go as far as saying superstar or even all-star, but I like his game. He drives he drives into the paint really good. He finishes, he's not scared of contact, and he's athletic.
Yeah, I like that. And I've always been a point guard guy. I've always liked guys who can, lead a team. I think he seems like he's knowledgeable in the offense.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think that in Dallas he got a little mixed up with Luka Doncic's rise, and I think that
Yeah.
now he might show us something here in New York. And now that we have some cap space, maybe put this guy around a superstar, and who knows how fast he could develop.
Yep. And you know what, Joel? I'm going to give you one final chance to say goodbye, and then I'll finish it off and say my goodbye to Kristaps.
Well, KP, it was a pleasure having you on my team. It was good while it lasted, KP, and I wish Kristaps Porzingis the best in Dallas. No hard feelings. I think that even though you might not think so, Jason, someday we'll say once a Knick, always a Knick. So, KP, see you later, bro.
You're a good man, Joel. KP, peace out, homie.
This week in Knicks Land.
So finally, guys, this is the last segment of the show. We like to call this segment This Week in Knicks Land. And it's a segment where we're going to dive into all the games that the team played this week. We're going to go over how the players performed. And we're going to pick a game of the week. And we're going to pick the Knick of the week. So, Jason?
That's right, Joel. And this is going to be a weekly segment we do towards the end of every episode. But before we get into this segment, I want to explain to the listeners that this is not so much about winning and losing or analytical, super deep breakdowns. It's going to be more about which players we think we should be keeping,
Right.
who we think can contribute to the team moving forward, and kind of highlights and what we think the players are showing and what they can do.
Okay. So we had, I believe, 3 games, Jason, this week. And if you want to
That's
go
right.
ahead and talk about the games and the scoreboard, the scores and stuff like that.
Yep. So this week in Knicks Land covers the week of February 24th, which is 3 games. We played against San Antonio, who we beat on the 24th. Finally, we won a game at home. It broke the franchise record 18-game home losing streak. How do you feel about that game?
It's definitely, we're going to talk a little bit more about that game. It's definitely the game of the week because we finally got a win.
I know.
Snapping that 18-game home losing streak was a must. I didn't want to be on the bad side of history on records, which we've been in the past. So I was glad that we broke that record. We didn't break that record, actually. And I'm glad that the guys came up fired up. I think Fitzdale must have said something to them that day.
I agree. I agree. Super happy we finally got that win. And yeah, I understand that we're trying to tank here, or not really, but we should be tanking here. But every once in a while, we need a win. These guys need to learn how to win.
These guys need to learn how to win. Losing over and over and over, it just brings down
the morale,
bad mood, and the morale and the mood of the team. So getting a win here and there shows these guys that, hey, we can compete in this league. We can get wins in this league, and eventually, I think that these guys are gonna grow chemistry together.
They're gonna learn from it. They're gonna learn from winning and losing.
Absolutely.
So yeah, like I said, 24th we beat San Antonio 130 to 118. On the 26th we played Orlando, 108 to 103 victory for us at home, and Cleveland on the 28th, who we actually lost to 125th to 118. The tanking, resumes.
But we still won that game because we were tanking, and a loss to a team that's tanking is a win, in my opinion.
I agree 100%.
All right, Jason. So let's go ahead and break down a little bit the San Antonio game. What do you think? How do you feel about that game? How you think the team played and how the players showed up?
Yeah, so that's definitely the game of the week. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. The win, breaking that 18-game home losing streak, was definitely the game of the week. I think that the guys are, showed up, played well. What do you think?
It was definitely a team effort. A lot of players, if not most of them, showed potential. One thing I noticed, 3-point shots were going in. Everyone was hot from outside.
Especially our boy, Damian Dotson.
Definitely.
I think Damian Dotson is a very, very good catch and shoot player. He moves very well without the ball. And I think that another thing that's very underrated from Damian Dotson that a lot of people don't give him credit for is his defense. I'm not saying he's an incredible defender, but he hustles out there. I've noticed something this year, Jason. Damian Dotson has been given the role of playing defense against the other team's best offensive player. Yeah. And I think that's something that's going to help him grow as a player for sure.
Definitely. And I remember watching this game with you, and we were saying he shows effort. Like he might not be a perfect defender, but he shows that effort. Yeah, he gives the effort. 100%.
Dives after loose balls as well. I think he shows a lot of promise as a potential six-man off the bench, and I think that his scoring actually gives him a little bit more of a boost to come off the bench for us, and who knows where the team's going to be next season.
Yeah, well, I agree. Dotson scored 27. Dennis Smith Jr., Kevin Knox, and Mude all had 19 points. Dennis Smith Jr., 13 assists, and Kevin Knox with 10 rebounds, while our boy Mitchell Robinson had a big game, 15 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 block shots.
Monster game, Jason. What a steal. I feel kind of proud of management for kind of scouting this guy and seeing potential in this guy. I think that our scouts are not being given enough credit because taking this guy deep in the draft like we did, and also, by the way, stealing Alonzo Trier as an undrafted free agent. I think that those two guys are contributing very well to the club. I think that both of these guys have the potential of being very good players in the NBA.
Yeah, definitely. Robinson, he just worked so hard. Like a lot of those rebounds, Absolutely. Sometimes you get those cheap rebounds, deflections, and all that. No, like this game, Robinson showed that he hustles for these rebounds, and he was just really good on defense. In transition, off on the block, he was really, very, very good. Trier, on the other hand, he didn't have the greatest games, but he had his moments. He needs to become more of a willing passer, and I don't know how you feel. I don't know if you agree with that, but he's really good, a really good shooter off the dribble, though. That he did.
Yeah, and one thing that I like about Trier is that he has certain intangibles that you can't teach. Yeah. I think he wants the ball in his hand. He wants to create offense. And that's something that I really like in a player, especially in a young player, his confidence. Unlike Frank, I don't want to give knocks on Frank, but I think Frank lacks that confidence. And I think that off the bat, we can see that in Trier. He's very confident with the ball. Izo, like they call him.
I know. I wonder if some of Carmelo Anthony rubbed off on him.
I think he's watched some Carmelo Anthony tapes. The only difference is that this guy's still young enough we can teach him that he needs to get back on the floor and play some defense. So.
Yeah, pass the ball, Trier.
But yeah, man, I think this was definitely a good game. I think that, seeing the guys play this way, seeing the team flow this way, the team chemistry, just gives me a little hope that if you put, like I've said this before to you in private, if we put a couple of veterans around these guys, specifically superstars around these guys, then we could actually have a team here. We are not giving, we're the NBA and scouts and team rivals and other fans are not giving our young players enough credit. I think that we do have promising young players, and I think that this game kind of showed against a team that's going to make the playoffs,
Yeah.
against the San Antonio Spurs, that we can compete. Maybe not every night right now, but maybe in the future these guys can actually become a good team.
I agree. And, part of being a good team is chemistry. And Mitchell Robinson and Dennis Smith Jr., I'm liking what I'm seeing from them too. They
Absolutely,
have a really good
absolutely,
connection. A lot of it is, flashy alley oops, but it's not just that. It's kind of like the pick and rolls and the way that they kind of, work together, like movement wise. I think they're building a really good connection. And that's something I'm looking forward to seeing, develop
absolutely,
or
absolutely.
evolve.
Yeah, I think that Dennis Smith Jr., like I said, he plays very very well off the pick and roll,
Yeah.
and so does Mitchell Robinson. So I know we're gonna see a lot of alley oop highlights in the future between these two guys.
Yeah, exactly. One guy who I also focused on and I want to see more from him, but he had a good game was Kevin Knox. He does well when he drives to the basket and he rebounded well, but he needs to stop taking those shots, like those kind of like quick shots.
So one thing that he does a lot, Jason, is that he rebounds the ball well. And I know we spoke about this for a guy his height. He rebounds the ball pretty well. I think he's about 6'8", 6'9".
Yeah.
And also, I like that he rebounds the ball and he, jumps into the fast break right away. But one thing I don't like about him is that he usually goes into the fast break and he tends to take these transition three-pointers
Exactly.
that he's not equipped to make yet. That's not his game as of yet.
Exactly.
And I know I've told you in the past, he's an excellent driver of the ball.
Yeah.
He has this little kind of like this, like this push shot that he does in the middle of the paint, and he usually makes those. So I think that he needs to start working more into driving into the paint and hitting up those floaters, because he actually makes those a lot of the time. And then in the offseason, maybe he needs to work a little bit more on his shooting and his defense. I think being a rookie, of course, he's a little bit being bullied out there, but I think that once he grows into his body, he can be a willing defender at times.
I agree 100%. I want to see him slashing. That's where he does his best work.
That's where he thrives, at least right now, until he develops a jump shot.
Exactly.
And so moving on here, and we're gonna talk about who we believe is our Nick of the week. I'm not sure who your pick is, Jason, but I honestly think we're in mutual agreement that the Nick of the week was Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson was putting up monster numbers out there for us.
Yep. Unanimous. He's definitely Nick of the week. Congratulations, Mitchell Robinson.
Yes, he was putting up incredible numbers out there. He had double doubles, blocks all over the place. I think he's the only rookie in the past, one of the only rookies in the last 30 seasons, to have a double double and 5 blocks in 2 consecutive games.
Yep.
So that's actually pretty good. He's in good company there with Yao Ming, Tim Duncan, Alonzo Mourning, Shaquille O'Neal, Dikembe Mutombo, and David Robinson. And guess what?
Amazing.
All but one is not in the Hall of Fame of these players, and Tim Duncan will be in the Hall of Fame someday. So he's among some good elite
company.
players.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if you've heard this stat too, but this week I remember reading somewhere that Robinson is the first Knicks rookie with consecutive games with 5 or more blocks. So
Awesome.
That's amazing. He's killing it, specifically on the defensive. And he's blocking 3-point attempts. Have you noticed that?
Absolutely. I think he is, if I'm not mistaken, he leads the NBA in 3-point attempts, blocks for 3-point attempts.
Yeah.
He has 13. One more than Ben Simmons and J. Rule Holiday. And Robinson, guess what, Jason, has played less than 900 minutes this season.
It's ridiculous.
Simmons and Holidays have both played more than 2,000. And guess what? They're perimeter players. So they are more bound to block these 3-point attempts.
Amazing.
So, the guy rebounds the ball. He has length. He's athletic. And also he defends the paint, but also goes out to a perimeter to defend 3-point shooters. To me, this is a guy who has kind of like a freak type of player, something that I haven't seen in a while. I think I've never seen, to be honest with you, a player that can defend both the perimeter and in the paint the way he's actually showing me he can do.
I agree 100%. And check out this stat, cherry on top. Mitchell Robinson is officially the 5th highest block percentage player in a season all time, only the only person who has a higher block percentage than him is a legend called Manute Bol.
Right. Who's a block legend.
Legendary. So, I mean, the guy's showing that he is not only steal, but potentially an elite, all-time defensive player.
That's awesome. And I think that with development, of course, he has to grow into his body, but I think that the ceiling is pretty high for him.
Definitely agree. So, Mitchell Robinson, you are the Nick of the week.
All right, guys, we've reached, unfortunately, the end of episode 1. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for listening to our very first episode. We will continue this 3-part series that we started today, which we talked about the past of the team. Episode 2 is going to be focused specifically on the present. We're going to go ahead and focus on our young players. We're going to go ahead and make a determination or give our opinions on who we should keep and who we should let go this offseason.
We might have some spicy takes, guys.
Absolutely. So, Jason, where can our listeners find us on social media?
So on Instagram, you can follow us on Our Year Knicks Podcast. And on Twitter, you can find us at NY This Is Our Year.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And
Thanks,
we will
guys.
see you next week.